Hey, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So, this week I have a lot of things that I want to talk about, but also I was drawing some stickers this week, so that's what you're going to see in the video. But it's not finished yet, so I'm still just in the sketch phase, and hopefully next week I can finish it up. So, like I mentioned last week, this week I started part-time work at my job, which has been quite a blessing despite there still being a lot of work to do. But I do have someone else to come help take the rest of the work off my shoulders, so that's been awesome. So I've had more time to sort of think and meditate this week, and I've got a lot of things on my mind, or at least a few topics that kind of stand out this week for me. The first one is having space or time to just sort of think and be alone with your thoughts. And it's funny that I mention this now because in contrast to where I was before in my job and where I am now, having that space and time just seems a lot more obvious because I didn't have that time in the past to just sit and think and, be alone with my thoughts. So this week has been very rewarding. I was able to take walks during the day after work and just sort of be out there in nature. Nature is where I sort of recharge and feel my best. So that was what I did with my time. Not only that to gain mental clarity, but I also needed to find focus. And I knew this because in the first couple of days of working part-time and then spending the other half of the time working on learning art, I was burning out. And I burned out sooner than I thought I would, which to me indicates that I had taken on way too much. So after a couple of days or a few days of working with my old schedule, I realized I needed to make some change. So I listed out all the tasks that I had set out to do, or that I was currently at least trying to do, whether I was conscious or unconscious of it, and broke it down, and then chose 5 that I really needed to focus on this year, and essentially just cut out the rest. This is essentially Warren Buffett's 25-5 rule, which essentially you list out 25 things that you have to do, and then you choose the top 5 things that are most important for you to do, and then the rest you avoid like the plague. I tested out this idea yesterday, and it definitely has worked out a lot better. And I think it's because I am not mentally shifting my mind between web design and, drawing and painting. And so my mind is a lot more focused as opposed to switching tasks. The other part of it is also that because I had taken on so many things that I wanted to do, every single hour was scheduled, and I literally had no buffer time to just even stop and think and just do nothing. So buffer time was incredibly important, which is why I decided to narrow down the things that I need to do so that within that given time slot, I at least have, at least 30 minutes to just take a break between my lessons, because I am spending roughly 3 hours a day doing art right after work. And as easy as I thought it would be, sometimes it is mentally taxing because I'm trying to focus really hard during those 3-hour sessions. The other part about space and time is just learning to relax and be a lot more present this week. As I mentioned, relaxation is something that I didn't really have as much before, and now that I have all of this time, I'm trying to find ways to relax more. I do believe in the idea that when we are happier, we are more creative. We tend to have our best ideas versus when we're stressed and under pressure. And I also think that relaxing and being present and being able to sort of observe this world in a more calm state just allows you to see life in a different way. And it allows me to observe things in reality that I can use for my art. And the more that I observe, the more that I see, the better my art will get. So moving on to the next topic, I want to talk about passion. Now, I never related to having a passion before because I felt lost and I didn't know who I was, and I wasn't really sure what I was passionate about. I knew that I was drawn to art and I loved making comics, but I didn't really consider it a passion because it was sort of an on and off thing, and I wasn't willing to put in the work and the hours to make it something incredible. But after spending 7 years doing design and feeling like an imposter, and just realizing that I was walking a path that wasn't truly authentic to myself, it felt more like I was walking a parallel path to art because I didn't think that I could make money in art. However, now that I have that years of experience and I suddenly well, not suddenly, but I basically committed to the idea of becoming an artist now, I am realizing that there is such an ease with doing art over design. And I think this is because I have a higher micro motive to do art and understand art versus design. Essentially, a micro motive is just a tendency to be biased towards certain actions and behaviors. For instance, some people just have a micro motive to work with their hands, or for me, I have more of a micro motive to understand art and line and creating imagery versus using design and creating something that's a little bit more informational. For me, while I understood the concepts of design pretty well, and I do find it very useful in even in making art, I always had a hard time relating to or even being motivated to push myself to learn more about design. But this is not the case when it comes to art. Everything in drawing and painting I am interested in, and I pick it up quite easily, and I connect the concepts and the ideas very fast. So I think this is kind of where passion starts coming in, where I start to realize that once I committed to becoming an artist, that my passion is increased. Because for one, I don't believe passion is something that we are born with. It is partially something that we will have to discover in our lifetime. But I definitely do think that having a micromotive or understanding your micromotives helps you understand what you are naturally inclined to do. And so this is kind of where my passion started forming, and realizing that I always had a passion for art but never sort of acknowledged it until now. And I define it as a passion because it is something that I am willing to suffer for in order to become great at it. Like I mentioned before, I was not committed to art, and so I wasn't really great at it. But now that I've decided to commit to it fully, I'm starting to realize that even though I have some days where I struggle with some of the concepts, or where I'm not getting as far as I would like, that I'm still willing to show up every single day and still do the grunt work and still do the practices, because that is how much I want it. And it just reminds me of a quote from Naval Ravikant, where desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. And to me, that is what passion is. My passion is something that I'm willing to kind of put the effort and suffer for a little bit so that I can get what I want out of it. And this was not something that I was willing to do with design, even though I worked in it for 7 years. Well, that might be a lie, because I did work pretty hard in design and I did try to understand concepts that I didn't know. But it felt like there was a disconnect. I couldn't connect to design because no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't get those concepts to come through in my art when I was on my own. And I believe it's because I just wasn't willing to fully commit myself to it because it wasn't really what I wanted. So I'm glad that after dedicating 7 years to trying to figure it out, that I decided to put it in the shelf and move myself towards a different career path. Now, like I mentioned before, the reason why I chose design was because it was the career choice that would end up making me money. It was also the one that most people would need or be hiring for, because graphic designers are commercial artists and their work is always going to be needed. Versus being a fine artist, I sometimes think you have to build your brand a little bit more, or that you're going to have to give a little to your audience because that is how you sell. My next topic I want to talk about is money mindset. I picked up reading a little bit more this week, and as I was reading Creative Campfire by Marco Bucci, I came across his quote that said, "No great artist has ever become great by setting out to pad his bank." And yes, that is very true. But I also believe that a successful artist or professional artist is someone who does make enough income to support their life. You obviously cannot have one without the other, and there needs to be a fine balance between your creativity as well as selling your art. This area of money mindset around selling art is still a tough one for me to navigate, and it's just because I don't have enough information in this field. So I will end up doing a little bit more research about how to make money selling my art and what different avenues of income I can do to sort of support myself while I do what it is that I'm passionate about. Now, I also come from a family background who very much values money, and when I was making three figures in my job, they were essentially very proud of me. But I was always working, and I was pretty depressed, and I had a lot of anxiety. To me, that monetary gain is not worth the mental and physical health decline. I am, however, very grateful that I had the opportunity to be making six figures and then realizing that at least the way that I was making that money just wasn't worth it. And that if I take on this commitment to this art career path, that perhaps I can still reach that income, but doing something that I am more in love with. And perhaps it's going to take a lot more work because I'll have to be an independent person. But I think in the end of the day, that autonomy that I have over my life and my schedule and my art is going to be so much more rewarding. So yeah, this is definitely an area that I am still exploring and trying to understand better. But the goal of this year, which I themed it as all in, is to just focus on making art and committing to art all the way. And then next year is when I will start worrying about selling art, because I do believe it's important that I learn how to make good art before I start selling art. And that is just the way I want to approach it. I think people can approach it in whatever way they find fit. But to me, because I never spent that time learning how to master my craft, I just want to dedicate at least 1 year to really understanding these concepts and nailing them down, building up that strong foundation, and so that when I move forward next year selling art, I can be a lot more confident in myself. I also think it's a great practice to move myself away from a scarcity mindset, thinking that if I pursue this career path that I'm not going to make any income out of it. And I don't think that's true at all. So I just want to focus this year on making really good art, and then maybe also in the back of my mind, just think about ways that I can start generating income. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what I've been thinking about this week, and I've just been showing up every day and practicing those foundations for art. And so that's what I'm going to continue to do. It takes a lot of time, and I only improve so much every single day. But the idea is to make progress, and to show up and just enjoy this process right now, because one day in the future I'll look back on this and realize how far I've come. So thank you for tuning in this week and watching my video. It would be greatly appreciated if you subscribed and liked my video. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.